just feel you're, if I had your phone number, I would have texted you, but I don't. But I mean, that it's like when you post those things on Facebook, it just gets so lost and so busy that, if I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're true. It's right. It's hard to keep track of all these different things we have to deal with that fly into our world, right?
Right. And then if you don't like it, like if you didn't like my happy birthday post, and then I would have created a whole drama thing, it would have been funny.
That's pretty funny.
Who doesn't like a happy birthday post?
Well, people that get busy, they don't pay attention to it.
And if she got like 100,
oh, I know what you mean. She didn't click it. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like anything on it. So you tell me there's a whole slew of people behind me all upset. I'm sorry, everybody.
Absolutely. I'm number one. I don't have time. Well, didn't you see my post on Facebook? No.
No. Who? What? No. Especially not Facebook. Not after. Anyway, we're not supposed to get into. We'll stick with happy birthday, Joanne.
I get, even though I stopped having birthdays a few years ago.
Yeah.
I'm going the other way now. I start to go strong.
Yeah. So this time every year you lose a year?
That's right. I think I'm 39. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, we just opened up the meeting, so give us another minute here and I think we'll get everything set up. I think the other link is all good to go. All right, I think I've got everything set up. If you're ready, Jane, I think everybody's signed in.
Yeah, I'm ready. As good as it got. Oh, I can see a mirror behind me. Look at that.
Okay.
Are we live, Karen?
We are.
Welcome, everybody. We have quite a few members, I guess. I was going to say in the crowd, but I don't know how to say it in the Zoom room. So I want to welcome everybody to the Village of Fayetteville Planning Board meeting for February. We have only one item on the agenda tonight, but it's an important item. And I have a few things that I want to say before we actually get to that item on the agenda. The first thing I'd like to mention, and I'm going to read this, that I'd like to say on behalf of all members of the planning board, I want to bring attention to the postcard regarding the status of the potential redevelopment of the property at 547 East Genesee Street. I believe that postcard was mailed to all households in the village. That's what I was told. I didn't confirm that. But the postcard suggests that the leaders of Fayetteville are not interested in having the property at 547 East Genesee Street redeveloped or environmentally remediated, and that such leaders are against the dedication of some land in that property, of having that dedicated to the village as a parkland. As a dedicated decision maker, as all of the members on the planning board, as dedicated decision makers, we found that postcard to be rather offensive. And I know that each planning board member cares about this community a lot and is dedicated to reviewing applications in light of the village's vision as set forth in its comprehensive plan. And so in my very humble opinion, the tenor of that postcard is very offensive and the message is simply poppycock. And that's all I have to say about that postcard. Karen, I think you wanted to add something.
Yes, if I may, Mayor Olson wanted me to share a letter that he's writing to the editor that addresses the postcard also. Dear editor, recently an anonymous postcard was sent to all Fayetteville residents in and outside of the village. The village of Fayetteville does not generally respond to anonymous postcards or letters. The information trying to be conveyed in this postcard needed a reply from the village. The village board, as well as the planning board, have been dealing with this property for many years. We have always been willing to listen to everyone. We have worked with many different developers to make this property become an asset to our village and our residents. We The current proposal is in front of the planning board. Let me be clear that our planning board is a group of very dedicated professional volunteers who we are lucky to have representing us at this level of government. The planning board, as well as the village board, always looks and evaluates projects based on the code to make sure it will fit into the character of our village. I have always taken the approach to listen to all development projects while evaluating them to make sure they know what we want in our village. First and foremost, it is our village, not the developer's village. That is why I am writing today, because this postcard is trying to divide our village and government. This is not fair to our dedicated planning board members or you, the residents of the village of Fayetteville. This project will be done based on code, neighborhood character, and other factors important to both our planning board members and the public, not based on a divisive postcard from an anonymous developer person. I know we are a village that works together for the betterment of all we serve. As mayor, my goal is to make Fayetteville a community all of us can be proud of and call home. We will continue this mission together and not let this type of action take us away from that mission. To all the dedicated volunteer board members in the village of Fayetteville, thank you for your time and talents. You deserve better than this postcard.
Thank you, Karen. Yep, thank you. So that was our opening dialogue. With that, I think that we are ready to move right on to our agenda tonight, which is an application from the Northwood Real Estate Ventures LLC. And I'm assuming Matt Naparella is with us tonight.
I'm elevating Matt to be able to speak, and along with other representatives. Let me just get through the list here.
And Karen, before we actually move into the application itself, I want to make a comment about comments that we have received.
Okay.
Well, while you're doing that, I will go ahead. We have the planning board and has received numerous comments and emails, primarily emails from folks in the village with respect to this application. We're not going to run through every single comment tonight. Karen has made a list, but I think she produced that list somewhere around 4 or 4:30 this afternoon. So if you submitted an email later on this afternoon and your name's not on that list, please know that you will be included. We do intend to have everybody's comments noted for the record. We're just not going to take the time tonight to read all of the comments in front of everybody, just for the sake of time. So Karen, would you mind running through that list?
Sure. This is the list of emails that I received from these individuals. Jason Fulner, Tammy Garby, Sharon Ames, Rosemary Oaks Lee, Donna Smith, Marjorie Bruch, Holly Greenberg, Rebecca Rolnick, Bob Weber, Ann Heinz, Lori Dykeman, Mary Beth Ballardini, Rob Grainer, James Scott Taylor, Wendy Ramsey, Alan Rolnick, Michael Smith, and lastly that came in was Casey Cleary.
Okay.
Those are all comments made via email.
Great, thank you. Again, thank you everybody for your comments. I am going to ask everyone to hold comments and questions. We've got a lot to discuss tonight. And when we get further on down the road in this meeting tonight, if folks have questions or comments, I will open up the floor to them, but I am going to ask everyone to keep their comments fresh and new. If you've already emailed a comment to us, just don't say it again tonight. We have heard everybody. I've read every single email. The planning board is aware of the comments that are out there. So with that, I think I don't see Matt here. There you are, Matt. You're right below me. All right, I'm going to hand it to you, Matt, if you want to kick off with a presentation of where your client is at.
Thank you, Jane. First and foremost, this postcard, this is the first we have been made aware of a postcard. This did not come from this development team, did not come from this group of panelists before you. We don't know where it came from, but be assured that the team before you today had nothing to do with whatever was sent. I would like to see a copy myself of whatever was sent, broadcasted. I'm a Manlius resident, not a Fayetteville resident, so unaware of what was sent. Obviously, the tone of it appeared to be distressful, and just be assured that this development team had nothing to do with that, whatever was sent out, broadcasted through the village. So I want to start with that. It's discerning to me and our entire team that something went out and in our name when it's not a part of this development team. So we'd like to move forward and be positive, and hopefully from the packages that the village has received, you will see that, we're in a forward and professional manner with regards to this application. So with that, if we don't mind, I'll jump right in. I found over the course of the last, what's it been, 2 years through these virtual meetings, that the best way for us to do it is to do a PowerPoint. And if you don't mind, I will share my screen. With that, the panelists among us, Attorney Kathleen Bennett, our representative developer Matt Lester, and our traffic consultant Gordon Stansbury are all here as panelists to discuss our application, if that's okay with everybody. So with that, if that's okay, Chair Rice, I will share my screen.
So that's okay. I'm just going to ask with respect, I know Attorney Kathleen Bennett and I know Traffic Engineer Gordon Stansbury. Would you mind with Matt Lester? I'm sorry, I'm not recognizing Matt's role with your team.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Lester. I'm the applicant. I'm actually the contract vendee. So I'll be the one who takes ownership of this project, should it be successful and we close on the property and move it forward. Yeah, everyone's face on this is relatively new to me. I've heard a lot about the project from prior applications. There's a lot, I think we could all say collectively, there's a lot of history here. My attraction of this project is twofold. One, I have relatives that live in the Fayetteville area. And two, this is the type of project that I seek out. This is a project that I think has an unbelievable opportunity. It's been challenged with a lot of things in the past. We've worked successfully in other villages throughout the Syracuse market. We're working through something in Manlius right now. We achieved site plan approval, and we're looking forward to closing and starting in the spring. We're working on a few things in DeWitt. We've developed in Clay, Camillus. I'm based out of Rochester, New York. My team is roughly 6 people, and we cover and do developments across New York State, from Saratoga to Jamestown, all the way down to the Hudson Valley. So we're local, I guess you could call it local, regional, and we have an affinity for this village and for this county. We like Syracuse, and we're excited to have this opportunity to present this application. And candidly, I'd love to be able to just look forward. I don't like to look in the rearview mirror. I like to look forward. We are attracted again to opportunities such as this. We're familiar with brownfields. We're familiar with retail development, and we always look to partner with the municipality that we end up developing in. We're not going anywhere. We're committed to our projects once we have the confidence of the property owners, the sellers, and we're committed to stay with the project. We have quite a portfolio. We don't sell much, so we will look forward to a long-standing partnership with the village should we work our way through this application. Nice to meet everyone, I guess, to first start off. So
thank you, Matt.
With that, sorry for the long-windedness, but I'll turn it back over to Matt.
Thanks, Matt. So again, the team, and I've kind of highlighted here on the screen, the owner of the property is FUBU Environmental. Eric Gurnett is a managing executive. You just met Matt Lester. On the team and on the call or the virtual meeting is Attorney Kathleen Bennett, myself in the background, and and largely responsible for that nice binder you guys all received is my colleague Christian Hill, as well as other parts of my team, Neil Zensmeyer and Jim Valentine. Traffic consultant Gordon Stansberry is with us tonight to kind of talk about some of those things. With that, I think a brief introduction. Kathleen's going to kind of talk us through, a few things, and then I'll kind of jump back in and talk about that package. So, Kathleen.
Thanks, Matt. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the time tonight to present our application. As we discussed at the December meeting, Northwood is proposing to redevelop, reuse, and renovate the existing non-conforming structure that's located at 547 East Genesee Street by converting that existing non-conforming structure from an old metal-clad, deteriorated, and contaminated structure into a state-of-the-art modern grocery store. The project would reduce the non-conforming structure from 137,000 square feet to approximately 56,550 square feet. The project does comply with the village code. The proposed grocery store use is a permitted use in the industrial district. The code officer concluded that work on the non-conforming structure is also permitted under the zoning code. And downsizing a non-conforming structure is also consistent with New York State common law, which favors reducing non-conformities. At the December board meeting, you also asked the applicant to put together a complete application, which is what it is now done with the binders before you. And as Matt walks you through that binder, you'll see how the project satisfies each of the criteria for the special use permit as set forth in section 18741 of the village code and as discussed in my letter of January 21st, 2022. In addition, and there were a lot of comments that I saw.
Kathleen, I don't mean to interrupt you. Is it 18741 or is it 18714 that you're referencing? And it could be my.
I was referencing the special use permit section. Did I get those numbers backwards?
Nope, you're right.
Okay. Okay.
Nope, my bad. Sorry.
Nope, that's okay. Thanks, Jane, for clarifying that. And I saw some of the comments that came in today from the residents, obviously concerned about seeker. And so the application packet that we submitted contains a full environmental assessment form, together with detailed information and studies demonstrating that the potential impacts have been studied and adequately mitigated such that the project will not have a significant adverse impact. And a negative declaration would be appropriate here. In fact, the project will result in the remediation of a contaminated property and the elimination of an eyesore in the heart of the village. The environmental benefits of the project can't be overstated. Cleaning up a contaminated property prevents and reduces human exposure to contaminants and prevents further degradation of surrounding properties and habitats. In addition, 15 acres of the property will be donated to the village to expand Coulter Park, a direct benefit to the neighbors. Additional benefits of the project include job creation, business development, and additional property and sales tax revenues for the village. And so tonight, we would ask the planning board to find the application complete for purposes of starting that seeker process by declaring its intent to act as the lead agency for the purpose of undertaking a coordinated environmental review and then making the required referral to the county planning agency under General Municipal Law 239M. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Matt, who will walk you through all of the information in the binders.
So my intent today, and I'll try to run through this quickly, but I wanted to be thorough at the same time to allow the planning board to understand what they have before them in that 3-ring binder and those plans. This slide we shared in December, but I still think it's pretty important. The project summary page, the proposed building of 56,550. This is a 59% reduction in the building size. The proposed impervious area is 6.4 acres. That's a 15% reduction of the existing impervious area of 7.5 acres. Beyond that, there's the building and pavement setbacks to the adjacent and adjoining property lines, especially to the east and west, are now greater. On the east side, the existing structure is 28 feet. Now the proposed structure is going to be over 300 feet. On the west side, the existing structure is 77 feet from the property line. The proposed structure is 100 feet, a gain of 23 feet. The pavement edges on the east side are real close, 4.3. The proposed pavement edge is now 23 feet. And on the west side, the existing pavement edge is about 8 feet and the proposed pavement edge is 46. Beyond that, the alteration of that structure will include new building facade. It'll include site aesthetics within the village, pedestrian and bike accessibility, improved landscaping, and as Kathleen said, environmental cleanup, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then the proposed donation of the 15 acres. So if we look at, again, existing conditions, this is what we see. No one really sees this unless you're flying in a helicopter. It's about 250-foot altitude. This was a drone pic taken this summer, August 2021. But you can kind of see the breadth and the size of the overall structure and that impervious area surrounding it. All we really see when we walk down the street is this front yard, but this is, again, looking at the structure from, actually this is the opposite side of the street, about from the Honda dealership, and you can see that metal siding, the unkept landscaping, and visually how that looks in the summertime as it exists today. When we look at that property again in an aerial view, the property limits is about 32.9 or almost 33 acres, as highlighted by this pink line. Beyond that, you can kind of see some other things in this overall aerial. You have Coulter Park sitting here in the northeast corner. You can't really follow Bishop's Brook, but it meanders about like my cursor's flying here. That's where Bishop Brook is under on the north end of the property. The other important piece here is this is a environmental cleanup site. This little white thing is an environmental pumping shed. This brown area is what the engineers have been working on for the past 30 years on the cleanup. This is where the underground collection system is and where they're collecting the groundwater, bringing it to this pump house, doing the treatment, and then naturally discharging it back. So the package that you guys have received, there was 14 sections in that binder. As Kathleen said, we had the applications of both site plan and special permit. We have the seeker EAF. We have a site plan set of 16 sheets now instead of just the one sheet. So now we have a complete site plan. We've included architectural plan and elevation from the proposed tenant. We go into a little bit, just for clarification, those specific zoning code that we're citing. We have a traffic report, and when I get to that section, Gordon Stansberry is going to talk a little bit because it's a critical element to the village. A complete stormwater analysis and a stormwater pollution prevention plan, the acronym SWIP. We've included in the package some write-ups from the environmental team from Ramball/O'Brien and Gear, who've been working on this site for well over 20 years in the process, and as well are the key members of the Brownfield Cleanup Program. We performed a noise study to kind of analyze what the impacts will be to the neighboring properties. We've completed a site lighting study so that we can indicate through digital analysis what the impact of site lighting will be. We've contacted the local utility companies, and we've determined the availability for the public utilities of sewer and water, as well as understanding that we have ability for the private utilities of gas and electric. We've contacted DEC with regards to threatened and endangered species and have got the indication from them. And lastly, we've had a visual impact study. So with that, when we talk about that site plan set, and I'm not going to go in a huge amount of detail, but I just want to kind of go through this, flip pages quickly to indicate the breadth of the site plan application. We've got a site preparation plan. We've got a detailed overall layout plan and some key elements in this. And I talked about, remember that aerial and the little shed. The shed stays. There's no, the shed has to stay in operations. The pump and treat system is still required by DEC. That brown area that showed up on that aerial is this dash line. That particular area is identified through Ramboll and DEC as the area 1 of primary environmental importance. And what that means to us is that particular area cannot be impacted with grading or fill, and it has to be left alone and let the pump and treat system continue to work. When we look now at some of the detailing of the overall layout, so I'm just taking that same plan and bringing it a little bit closer to the layout. We're maintaining that big green space in the front yard, but at the same time, providing pedestrian and bike access to this new use. So this separate line here that will be screened both on the village side and on the private side with appropriate landscaping and appropriate crossings to get pedestrians and bike to the new store. This little box here, I think I can zoom in just a hair on this program. Where is that? This little box here is a proposed bike shelter, so that that's people that want to bike to the store can have both a bike rack, but also a shelter for bikes and such. Proper movements and such were analyzed for the delivery vehicles as well as customers. And I know in our discussion, in December, it was brought up, well, why don't we spin the store facing Genesee Street? And this was initially proposed way back in the previous development scenario when the building was pushed back a lot further to the north and away from the street. The rotation of the building and the layout of the building, there's beyond what is being asked for is also, you know, as a designer, you have a lot of play here. We have to maintain that green space that everyone in the village is so accustomed to in that front yard. And by maintaining that green space, if we start to put parking field into the front, then we're going to impact this green space. At the same time, we have to have proper circulation for both the customer vehicle and those delivery vehicles. And at the same time, when we talk about the proposed tenant, his front door to his store is where my cursor is circling here. He has a very strict and requirement based on his business plan that 60% of his parking field be within 75 feet of his front door. We can't do that if the parking in the building is spun a different direction, beyond the fact that through the previous applications, this rotation was deemed most favorable through discussions. And albeit this is a new application, I just wanted to bring those items up. When the site plans include a complete grading plan. And on here, you'll see, when you look at it closely, maintaining the elevation plus or minus of the existing first floor, hence the alteration of that building. But so doing, we still have to off-grade appropriately. We have to provide low catchment areas for stormwater and provide stormwater mitigation for the runoff from the impervious areas. Albeit we've reduced the impervious areas, we're still doing the engineering proper and good engineering practice for our stormwater to further enhance the runoff control. Again, detailed grading plans with now spot grades and making proper determination. This goes a long way into our ADA accessibility and making sure we have appropriate accessible routes to all locations, especially from accessible parking spaces to the front doors to the building and such. And again, a little bit more grading to show the detailing of stormwater bioretention and mitigation basins, as well as maintaining that access to that existing collection shed. The plan includes now a utility plan and showing how the utilities will serve the building and showing proper connections to the public water and sewer systems and showing appropriate loops for fire protection, as well as the private utilities of electric and gas service to the building. It includes a lighting plan, and I'll get to that in a second because we got some cool graphics that we provided, but really, and it's tough to see in this overall view, but each of these black spots are proposed light locations. The little dots really are foot candle, computer generated based on the height and the spec of that luminaire. It tells us what the light intensity will be at the ground. And from that, it also determines the light shed. And the important part here is at property lines that there is no foot candle light shed beyond the limits of the subject site. And when you look closely at this lighting plan at full scale, you'll see that the foot candle is zeros at all property lines. We've got a complete landscaping plan. And again, it's tough to read on here of what those pieces are, but the landscaping plan has additional screening along the west property line. That screening, I'm just trying to find my notes here, one more page, will include site lighting, landscaping. Okay, on the west side, we will have some river birch. We'll have, I'm sorry, this is a screen of arborvitae, so evergreen screening. And beyond the fact there is this area adjacent to us in the industrial zone is also heavily wooded, but we're adding an arborvitae line here. Along the street frontage, we've got some river birch, flowering pear, some white spruce, and a variety, including red cedar and holly, to help both provide that screening and aesthetic pedestrian and bike path. We have an intermix of some red maple screening along this berm area for additional screening to the parking field. And then there's some barberry and buttonbush shrubbery along this access. And again, that's another pedestrian access from any pedestrians from the east that enter through and come to the site, and providing a separate pedestrian access along that way. So beyond that, this sheet includes about 6 different sheets of site details. I'm just showing this one because it kind of highlights that pedestrian areas, pedestrian walkways, bike racks, and that bike shelter that we talked about. In the package, there are architectural plans, and these are just quick elevations provided by the proposed tenant. Importantly, it has a brick wainscoting that's wrapping the entire building on all 4 sides, followed by textured hardy board of various colors to create a specific feature of the building, different, flat hardy board to textured hardy board to make it look like a shingle, and different colors. You can kind of see the intellectual gray is the gray pieces, and then the maize or this more of a golden tan color, and as well certain banding of boysenberry color, and then some red accents for doors and awnings and such. Oh, there we go. This is just kind of perspective view to kind of show the front wall protections, giving it some additional feature, and breaking out those long walls and such. Zoning code interpretation. Here's your article 187-14A. The Fayetteville Zoning Code allows for the continuation of non-conforming structures. Non-conforming structures may also be repaired and maintained and even altered as long as the future use is allowed by code, i.e. the retail use in the industrial district is an allowed use.
Matt?
Yes.
Your reading of that paragraph, is that verbatim from our code, or is that?
Yes, ma'am. That is a strict, I didn't put quotes, but that is right out of the code, the word for word.
So, and you're saying that's in 187-14A?
Well, that the non-conforming structure might be under a different section, but the first section of 187-14A.
Yeah, so the 187-14 is about non-conforming structures. my read of the code, and we may just have to pull it up online here, is that it does not have the words altered. It has used, repaired, and maintained, but not altered. So I'm just questioning.
Okay. I'll have to verify.
Get back to
the
that.
wording. Again,
Yep.
it's, you know, the other item. So yes, let's get back to that once I finish through here.
Okay.
This is under quotes structure. There's a definition in code for structure. Quote, anything constructed on the ground or attachment to something having a location on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get back to that because, you know, really the code interpretation from those three pieces allows the structure being anything on the ground to be, well, our word is altered. And if there's a different interpretation, so be it. But it's a non-conforming structure. And we're indicating that as such, that the 137,000 square feet structure can be changed to a 56,550 square feet retail grocer by right and by site plan and special permit by the planning board. So again, we'll get into that. I'm going to take a break for a quick second. Gordon Stansberry is with us. Again, we understand the importance of traffic along this corridor. And as such, the development team has brought in who we think is the local expert with good connections, both locally and with state DOT. Gordon, take it away.
Thank you, Matt. I'm only going to give Matt a short break because I want to give you a quick run through the study of what we completed. But I don't want to dig too deep into the details unless there's questions from the board. So first off, I am a licensed professional engineer and a certified PTOE, which is a professional traffic operations engineer with the Institute of Transportation Engineers. The traffic study that we completed was completed in December 2021. This study has been reviewed and accepted by DOT, New York State DOT, as they have primary jurisdiction of access to Route 5. The study area for the traffic impact study was Route 5 from the Salt Springs Road diverge to the post office driveway, as well as the intersection of Route 257 with Salt Springs Road. The study focused on the typical weekday operation, the morning and evening peak commuter hours specifically. One thing that is kind of nice about this traffic study is that the traffic volume counts were collected in January 2020, which is before the COVID impacts were felt on traffic operations. So we have good historical numbers pre-COVID. So we're confident that we have a good representation of existing operations in the area. The morning peak hour was 7:15 to 8:15 a.m. The evening peak hour was 4:15 to 5:15 p.m. In addition to the traffic counts, we collect the standard information, operating speeds along Route 5, which are generally in the 38 to 41 mile per hour range, as well as site distances at the proposed driveway locations, both of which are well over design standards. So given the speeds and site distances, there's no safety concerns with the driveway locations that are proposed. Traffic generation for the proposed development was estimated using the IT Trip Generation Manual 11th edition, land use supermarket which is specific for this type of development. Based on the IT Trip Generation handbook, the average pass-by rate for an evening peak hour is approximately 36% of the traffic generated. We made an assumption that there was a low morning traffic generation pass-by of about 10%. So based on the standards that we use for traffic engineering, the proposed development is estimated to generate approximately 100 cars entering and 66 cars exiting during the morning peak hour, and approximately 250 cars entering and exiting during the evening peak hour. As I noted, about 36% of that traffic is what we call pass-by trips, which are trips drawn from traffic already passing the site on Route 5. So the actual new traffic generation is only about 165 trips entering and exiting during the evening peak. The rest of the traffic would be drawn from the existing traffic already passing the site. From a distribution standpoint, we are estimating that approximately 40% of the trips will be to and from the east on Route 5, 30% to and from the west on Route 5, 15% to and from the south on 257, 10% to and from the north on 257, and about 5% from Salt Springs Road. Once we apply the distribution and apply the trips to the study area intersections, we rerun the analysis to determine the impact of the development. The proposed mitigation to address the impacts primarily were located at the site driveway. The recommendation is to construct a 200-foot eastbound left turn lane on Route 5, 150-foot southbound right turn lane on the main driveway, and to install a new 3-color traffic signal with protected permitted eastbound left turn phasing and a right turn overlap phase. In addition to these improvements, State DOT came back and requested or required that we add an extension of the left turn lane to provide a two-way center left turn lane between the site driveway and the plaza right near Route 257. This would be a significant benefit for the village in that it will provide a refuge for left turn movements in and out of the plaza, the gas station, the Honda dealer. This is going to significantly reduce congestion through that section by providing that third lane to take left turns out of the through lanes. With these proposed improvements, we also optimize the signal timings at the East Genesee Route 257 Salt Springs Road intersections. With the improvements and the signal optimization, we found that the overall traffic operations were consistent with the background condition with no significant impact from the development. I would note, in addition to the benefits from the two-way center left turn lane, I do believe this development may actually reduce some of the traffic demand on the traffic signal in that it will now provide a grocery store on the east side of the village. So some people will go to this grocery store versus traveling through the signals down to the Tops or to the Wegmans, which is not empirically caught in the traffic study because we don't take traffic away from other developments when we study. So we look at a worst case. And then finally, just to reiterate that this study has been submitted to the state DOT. We did get a formal response from them on January 4th, concurring with the proposed improvements and the findings of the study that there would be no significant impact. And once we finish the presentation, I'll be happy to take any questions the board may have.
Gordon, if you don't mind, Gordon, I have one very quick question. As you're aware, the state is looking at the potential changes to I-81, which will mean a realignment of traffic to 481, I-481. And did you take any of that potential happening into consideration with your traffic study?
No, I did not. Given the distance from 481 and 81, the general east-west travel, I do not believe would be significantly impacted through the village of Fayetteville.
Okay, thank you.
So when someone takes a look at Gordon's traffic report and runs through it, unless you're another traffic engineer, it's tough to visualize. So we asked Gordon through his programming and through the analysis to create in the Synchro program videos that show exactly what he's talking about. So this first video, and this was in the package due to the size of these videos in the thumb drive that was attached. And I'm just going to play brief snippets of these. But this is a simulated traffic movement along this main corridor at Genesee Street for the existing condition morning peak. So when I hit play, we can kind of see, you know, what's happening. And this is kind of where the driveway goes to Hall and Dieter on the east side of the site. You can kind of see the main intersection here with Genesee Street and 257, and also the movements that are occurring on FM Road as they approach Salt Springs Road. And you can kind of see what's happening here. And the board should really spend a minute to take a look at this. But existing AM peak, you can kind of see the lag. Now that signal releases, cars get moving. But look over here, the backup that occurs in the AM peak. So when I stop this and we say, okay, let's go to the next slide. Hold on. Stop.
One thing I want to interject while you're switching.
Yeah, go ahead.
Screens, Matt. One of the biggest comments I get on traffic simulation videos is people always say it doesn't look like all the cars are there. I just want to note that traffic volumes are all properly input, and it's just that when you're looking at a high aerial view, it never looks as crowded as it is in reality. But the queues and the volumes are accurate in the models.
So this would be that developed condition. So now we look over here to the east. The proposed driveway with the signal is now applied. And this is the morning peak again, developed condition. And you can kind of take a look at, spin your eyes of what's happening here to the east. Right now, that signal is released. You have a little bit of backup here, but nothing worse than occurred in existing condition. As that starts to build up in the morning peak, it's starting to get there. And then that signal timing, look, everything was released on Salt Springs, but now before that gets too bad, this gets released in the morning peak. So again, we're not even, halfway through this particular video synchro that Gordon did for us, but it really is helpful to kind of understand what those numbers are showing and the detailing of the specific analysis of our main interchange in the village and what the impact is of our proposed site development. So then when we look at the other condition, the existing condition afternoon peak, now you're going to see the movement coming the other way, right? It's still pretty busy. We all have been here in the afternoons, and the westbound traffic is still pretty substantial, but certainly the eastbound traffic is a lot different than in the morning. So you can kind of see the eastbound traffic coming up to that main intersection and the movements that occur here. And you'll see the gaps that are created. And again, the timing of those signals are all inputted into this programming to kind of release and replicate what is being proposed. And so again, in this existing afternoon peak, it's kind of replicating those pieces. And again, the video will look at the developed conditions. So now here off to the east is the developed piece. And again, the traffic generation with an intermixing of different vehicle types and such. So that gives you a visual aspect of what those numbers show.
I want to interject one more statement really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just for the board's information, the proposed traffic signal at the site driveway, we are recommending in the evening peak that be coordinated with the main signal at Route 257. By coordinating the signals, we'll be able to, as you can see right now, like the westbound traffic, as it's approaching the light turn green and the traffic already cleared out. So it's going to reduce some of the queuing between those two signals by allowing them to work together to send platoons through, which will help access to that plaza and the other developments in that segment.
Gordon's job is often very difficult because everyone drives a car and feel they're transportation and traffic experts. But when you look at the computer generation of what these numbers are and the statistical analysis involved, it really is a in-depth science, and Gordon is one of the best. And I think we have to rely on his conclusion in the review of DOT, who works all of these major corridors. So I'll leave it at that, but certainly board members, to take a look at that thumb drive that was presented, and it helps you gain an understanding of the numbers that are provided in the report. I'll keep going. I'm on section 8. Section 8 of that binder is a complete stormwater analysis and SWIP. the main thing here is this site is by DEC standards a redevelopment project, meaning the impervious area is already existing. And in this case, we have a 15% reduction of the impervious area. We are still providing quality and quantity mitigation, as I talked about in the grading plan, and that's a good engineering practice. And in that report, and I'm sure peer review will take a look at that report for its completeness, but that is inclusive of our analysis and part of that package provided to the planning board. I'm going to spend a quick minute on the hazardous waste site because it is critical to this particular site. So upon accurate die casting stopping operations, the subject site was added to the DEC Registry of Inactive Hazardous Waste Sites, January 1990. Okay, so quite a while ago, over 30 years now. There's all kinds of acronyms with these guys, but the interim remedial measures, an IRM, were proposed, agreed upon, and completed. So a bunch of stuff was done to immediately protect the environment. Contaminated soils were removed. There were some tank removals. There was the installation of a groundwater collection and treatment system. This was all completed within 9 years by 1999. The groundwater collection and treatment system, as I discussed earlier, has been in operating since 1999 to currently over 20 years. Between 2008 and 2010, so about 12 years ago, additional measures were completed to mitigate the potential of vapor intrusion into buildings adjacent to the site. Oops, sorry, I shouldn't be doing that. Based on the activities completed, DEC in June of 2014 determined that no additional remedial measures were needed, but that groundwater collection and treatment system be continued. As well, there were some conditions to that finding.
What were those conditions, Matt?
I'll have to give them to you, Chris. There was it dealt with no groundwater wells for public consumption. It dealt with
was it dependent on the build of the use of the site remaining as industrial?
No, not at all.
Vacant?
That was not a condition, Chris. Okay. It was and again, we can provide those, or I can have Ramball and Deb Wright kind of list those out specifically. But there's 3 or 4 of them. It includes that I talked about that area 1, and that no excavation or disturbance can occur in that area 1. And it included no basements, but you can build on slabs. But as well, and I'll talk about in January 15, FUBU, the owner of the property, applied for a brownfield cleanup program as a volunteer into the program. And so if I can turn the page. So what that is, that program with DEC, the BCP, again, acronym, Brownfield Cleanup Program, was established by DEC to encourage the redevelopment of contaminated sites and return them to productive use, thereby enhancing the tax and employment base of a community and transforming blighted properties through a safe and controlled programs with strict means and methods to protect the public and environment. The activities associated with the BCP is governed by state law 6 CRR-NY subpart 375.3. It's a law. DEC is not going away. For the BCP, they act as the lead in administering the program with its primary focus on being protection of the environment. As well, New York State Department of Health is involved at each step in the process with its primary focus is protection of communities and human health. Both of these state agencies are still in-depthly involved today, tomorrow, and in a continuum because of the fact that it's an inactive hazardous waste site. They don't go away. The program, as stated by the upper piece, is to transform the blighted properties into a safe and controlled program. Each step of the process is subject to review and approval by DEC. And that step process is a significant and lengthy the owner's consultant Rambo and the agent that we're dealing with, Deb Wright, very involved, and she'll throw out so many acronyms and so many steps, your head will spin. But it's a very involved process to be in the BCP. They are, and again, here it is, Rambo is implementing the BCP program for the owners. This includes a remedial investigation work plan, a remedial investigation report, qualitative, human health exposure assessment, and a remedial work plan. For the most part, these first three have been either close or totally completed. The last item becomes this remedial work plan. You say, well, why is that not done? Because the remedial work plan cannot be completed because it has to be completed in conjunction with any subsurface and surface activities associated with any redevelopment plans. That's what the BCP program is all about, is to create a development plan on the site. The BCP program then establishes what you can and cannot do. Since there's nothing approved yet, then the remedial work plan cannot be finalized until they know what the impacts are. We kind of showed that grading plan. We're staying away from one particular area, but any trench work, and another condition, Chris, is any trench work that is below a certain elevation, the soils have to be either treated on site or brought to a landfill. Very costly type of work. And as such, we work hand in hand with Rambo to make sure that we're being engineering sensitive and engineered control with any of our excavations that occur.
So your RI work plan's complete. That was submitted, that was included in the package as October 2019. And you say the remedial investigation report is complete as well?
I believe that is on a preliminary basis and has not been finally accepted and certified by DEC, but it's ongoing, and that's under conversation between Rambo and DEC. They've submitted I think 2 rounds of preliminary far as that RI report.
Okay, so we don't have any idea about what kind of analytical that they found out there.
Well, again, they've been collecting data in all of the for 20 years. They got 20 years of data coming out of their pump and treat system, and that every 6 months they collect that data. And you know, I think during one of our
what I'm getting at, Matt, is that there's a lot of talk in this application about cleaning up the site, and I'm curious as to what the applicant feels that is going to entail. Is it leaving the slab on grade and saying that there's no receptors and therefore no risk? Or is there any kind of discussion about removing some of the contaminated soil that may be underneath that slab? I've done quite a bit of work on different industrial as well as commercial facilities, and we always miss stuff underneath the slab because we don't look until we have to.
Well, I think go ahead, Matt Lester. Yeah, I just wanted to address that. You could rest assured, I'm in the middle of this process in the village of Manlius with the Department of Health and the DEC. So we're familiar with how this process goes. We're going to be looking to the DEC to guide us and make sure that we get the site clean to satisfy the Department of Health and the DEC. There's still some things that we need to get more involved with. You know, more drilling, more samples. As you know, you're sounds like you're pretty familiar with it, but whatever the requirement of the state is in the Department of Health will be satisfied. And candidly, in these scenarios, the more remediation you conduct, the more incentive lies for the developer. So it does us no service to leave any contamination behind. You know, there's a 3-to-1 credit if you're familiar with how the program works. There's significant incentive to make this a very thoroughly clean site. And of course, we're going to be under the watchful eye of the DEC and the DOH. So I could assure everyone on this call that in order to get through and get a certificate of completion, we will have to perform the required cleanup. that's all I want to make sure we drilled home, no pun intended.
Okay.
So
Well,
we're committed to be continuing to work with Ramball closely through the process. And part of that has been awaiting the final development program, quite frankly. And they're anxious to wrap this up and get on with those construction aspects. With regards to sub-slab scenarios, there are unknowns still today. They have not investigated sub-slab, and that's the unknowns. And I think between the developer and the owner, there's contingencies associated with their financing package. So again, I think the stressful point here for the village is that they're not on their own. It's DEC and Department of Health, the Ramball, very qualified environmental cleanup firm, and then the development team. It's a three-way street, and certainly village codes can be involved at any level as well to make assurance that what's being done is in accordance with any finalized and agreed upon remedial work plan.
And Matt Naparella and everyone, just for your own benefit, I just looked at some notes that we had existing from Ramball. The DEC has all the data that exists under the slab. So I don't have that at my fingertips, but there's extensive data available that the DEC is made aware of as far as Ramball has done. So just wanted to reiterate, we have a handle on it. It's obviously the work plan is contingent on what we decide to move forward with, but they have the data for under slab. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Is that good, Chris? I mean, that's really just wanted to kind of summarize that and where we are, because I know there was some outstanding questions with regards to what the status is regarding the inactive hazardous waste site.
Yeah, it really just came down to the fact that you guys are proposing the word cleanup and clean is used a lot in this application, and in my experience, it's a loaded word. It's not necessarily descriptive or qualitative or quantitative. I mean, sorry, I'm reading your slide right now. And then the other side of the thing is that it seems that a bulk of this application is dependent on reusing the slab, the existing slab. And if that has to be removed to clean up the site, and looking just in the 2019 document, section 331, it is the sidewalls of the excavation completed as an IRM in this area identified that VOCs were not fully removed due to the presence of the foundation, which prevented further excavation. Furthermore, groundwater and monitoring wells MW 13 and 14 installed in this area have consistently contained TCE. So that's the eastern end of the building that's going to be, the slab's going to be removed.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So again, we're going to get with Ramball upon favorable decision and start talking about those specifics of that first plan that I put up there on the site plan, far as the site preparation plan, and that includes what portions of the existing building become raised and what's left. So again, we'll certainly get into all that and can answer any additional questions, Chris, that you might have based on your knowledge. And we would probably defer that directly to the Ramball team, who's a part of this and will continue to be a part of it. The other item, a seeker item that was raised in question, was the site sound and noise. The premise of this and our thought of this is once the facility becomes active, the loudest impact noise would be from commercial truck and their OSHA required backup alarms. Noting two things. that the village noise code indicates a maximum sound level emitted from a private property to be 70 decibels at the property line, and also noting that the village includes an exception for warning signal pursuant to the vehicle and traffic law, which is again these backup alarms. Regardless, we performed a sound study test by placing an OSHA backup alarm horn in the proximity of the future loading dock and measured the sound decibel levels at the nearest property limit. So if we look at the proposed building program, the red line being the existing building that exists, we set up a noise meter or a noise emitter, sorry, the noise emitter, the backup alarm, about at this location. There's a notch in the existing building. So at that location, the future northwest building corner, which is the potential for a truck to be backing up and start his backup movement, would be at this location 1. With a sound meter, we leveled we measured the ambient or the background noise level. So before anything occurred, with everything on relatively quiet, on a Wednesday at around 9:30 to 10:30 a.m., the ambient background was 46 decibels. We then, at that location, turned on the OSHA meter, the OSHA backup sound emitter, and the reading at that location was 125 decibels. We then turned the meter off. My colleague stayed with the sound emitter. I personally did this to make sure everything was done per my requirements, and measured off and walked west to the westerly property line. When I got to the measured distance, there happened to be an old fence here, so I felt pretty confident I was at property line. We then measured the ambient or background levels. Same thing, right around 46. Again, the meter's very sensitive, but it was pretty consistent that morning. Then had my colleague turn on that noise emitter, the backup alarm, again, which at that location was 125, at the property line emitted 65 decibels. We did a second test. We moved the noise meter to a location down the building, approximately where the end of the loading dock will be in the future. Did the same thing. Background measured around 45, went to the property line, actually turned on the meter, tested it. The level was 128. So again, 3 decibels is, all within accuracies. Went to the property line to the west. Ambient, relatively the same, 45. We're a little bit closer to the meter, but the audible sound at the property line was 67 decibels. I wanted to do another test. I wanted to see what the neighborhoods would be hearing. So we moved the noise meter or the noise emitter, the backup alarm, back to location 1. I left my colleague there. I drove around to Penwood and Camot Lane, the intersection right about here where the curve is. Measured the background at about 44 decibels. Called up my colleague. I said, okay, turn on the noise emitter. Again, at that location, it's over 100, 125 decibels. Sitting here in the neighborhood, the backup alarm noise sound was about 48 decibels. So with that, even though that is something that is allowed to happen by code, we received sound levels at our property line less than the village code level of 70 decibels. Just to get an understanding, a 65 to 67 decibels is equivalent to sound levels of normal speech at 3 feet. So if we were in the room and I had my noise meter with me, I would show you what 67 decibels sounds like. At 3 feet, I'm probably a little bit louder than 67, but that's a normal speech level at 3 feet. That's what we observed at the property lines from the backup meter. So our conclusion, The proposed development will not have an adverse effect to sound levels to the surrounding community based on what our assumptions that we make. We also wanted to look at site lighting, and we talked about this earlier, but I think it's critical to a lot of the questions that have been raised. So we have two types of site lights that are being proposed along the driveways and pedestrian walkways. We're looking at an architectural style with a LED luminaire mounting height about 16 feet. In the parking lot itself, we're going to have some standard steel poles with the luminaires mounted at 25 feet. When we did that lighting study based on foot candles, and again, what the tenant will want to see is safety. You know, where we live up here in the Northeast, I don't know, I call it 5 months out of the year, it's dark from 4 o'clock until, you know, through the PM times, and it doesn't get bright until, you know, nearly 7 a.m. So the average illumination in the parking field is about 2.1 foot candles. And at the same time, the illumination level at all property limits were 0 foot candles. Again, I kind of reiterate that graphic and kind of show those locations. In this graphic is the specs of those particular light poles, and this is kind of the light levels. But what I wanted to show is a nice graphic that our lighting consultant provided us, kind of showing you a site rendering of what that site will look like. It's kind of deceiving because all of these fixtures will be what we call dark sky compliant, meaning the light will shed down, it won't shed up. But it gives you an idea of the appropriate lighting intensity near that parking field. But as soon as you get to property lines, we're at 0 light shed, both on the west and east sides of the site. Part of the application and part of seeker is where you're going to get your water and your sewer. We did reach out to Onondaga County Water Authority. In the package, there is a letter from Steve Drake that talks about that there is available water supply to serve the project. As well, we've reached out to County Water Environmental Protection, WEP, the acronym. This came in literally the day that I submitted the package to Karen, but essentially they have adequate capacity to accept the project wastewater discharge, with the caveat, as any new program will have today, that the developer contribute to the I&I offset program, which we are committed to do. Almost done. Section 13, threatened and endangered species. We have contacted New York State Division of Fish and Wildlife, the Natural Heritage Program. They've come back and indicated that there are 2 species that are identified as threatened in the vicinity of the subject site. The first is the northern long-eared bat. Frankly, we see this on every project, not only in Onondaga County, but in Oswego and Oneida County. This is a threatened species in our area. The limitations are that it requires a site tree clearing in a particular window from April 1st, or no, I'm sorry, limitations, no clearing in the summer from April 1st to October 31st. So that means tree cutting has to occur November 1st to March 31st. Kind of backwards. You can't cut trees in the summer. You got to cut trees in the winter. This is due to the gestation of the bat and not to disturb them during their breeding periods. For our particular site, and again, it's a redevelopment site, there's very limited tree clearing associated with the project, just a little bit on the east end. And the development is committed to performing any of that tree cutting in the winter months from November 1st to March 31st to avoid any potential impact to the bat. The other, sorry, I'm doing that again. The other threatened species is a maple basswood. This is actually within Green Lake State Park, about a quarter mile away. The threatened species are, don't cut it down. Well, we're not cutting it down. It's not within our project site, so we will not be impacting that particular species of tree. The other thing that we wanted to highlight, and there's been some conversations with regards to the acronym BCA, Bird Conservation Area within Green Lake State Park. So we looked into this and had a conversation with DEC. DEC established the bird conservation areas on state-owned properties in about 1997 for the purpose of integrating the interest related to bird conservation into the agency's active planning, management, and research projects. Green Lakes has been listed as a BCA, but BCAs do not extend beyond the limits of the state-owned land and hold no special jurisdiction of adjacent or nearby properties to the said BCA. Regardless of that, the following elements for the project help preserve the integrity. Leaving over 15 acres, if the village so decides to take it over, adjacent to Bishop Brook, untouched in close proximity to Green Lakes. That's our nearest proximity to Green Lakes, is that 15 acres that we're willing to donate to the village. The redevelopment is actually reducing the building structure from 137,000 square feet to 56,000. So we're reducing any impact by reducing the building area. We're going to minimize tree clearing and also providing dark sky compliant site lighting. So even though we don't have to do anything, we're saying we're doing the best we can for the environment here, especially with regards to the bird conservation area. Visual impact. So what we've done is we've taken a view perspective comparison of what exists today via both ground and drone pictures versus a computer rendered version of the future based on computer program SketchUp. From the comparable slides, I hope everyone can agree that the developed condition does not pose an adverse impact to the visual conditions along this industrial zone section of the village of Fayetteville. So street view picture as it exists today. This is kind of a little bit west of the subject site, kind of looking through the Circle K, looking in a northeast direction. You can kind of see the existing building itself. The rendered version of that in SketchUp. So we're still seeing Circle K. We're going to have some additional screening and landscaping. And again, the building is still there, but it's screened a little better. And again, the visual aspect of that building looks a little better than it does today. Pushing up a little bit further east. Now we're beyond the Circle K, again, kind of looking in a northeast direction. This is what we see today. Unkept landscaping, metal-sided building, looking pretty rough. In the future at that location, maybe a little bit further east, we're going to have the new signalized intersection. Again, some screening, hiding the visual impact of that, still having a pretty big green lawn area reaching east to the Hall and Dieter accountant office. Looking street view, looking north. So now we're standing probably about in front of Tracy Lumber's driveway, looking directly north. This is how it looks today. Again, you do have that big empty lawn area. Frankly, it's mowed better than I've seen all summer long. So it looks like they caught them on a good day here. Some land, some rough shaped trees in the front, and again, that brown deteriorating metal building. In the future, still have a big green area, better landscaping, and again, we're doing what we can to change that facade looking, improving the facade and the building. It's still, a building is still there. It is a industrial site. So now we're past, going a little bit further east, kind of looking northwest. Here is the Hall and Dieter accountant office. This is the east appendage of the existing building. In the rendered version, looking at the same thing, we've rendered in the Hall and Dieter building, some street trees that exist, and the side of the building. Again, doing a pretty good job screening and hiding the parking field and looking in that direction. So I call this the helicopter view. This was taken with drone. We're saying 80 feet. We might have been a little bit higher when we took this. No one's going to see this, but it kind of gives you that perspective of this is what it looks like today. This was taken about August of this year. And then in that same helicopter view, the building smaller, parking field a little bigger, but again, facade wise and looking at that development and comparable, when you go back and forth to these two slides, you know, that's your visual impact. So with this program, we're saying that we're not adversely impacting the visual aspect within the village comparatively to what it is today. That's my presentation. That is the binder that the planning board members have received. We hope we've completed to your satisfaction the requirements, as Kathleen said, to start of a site plan special permit application, as well as providing detailing of environmental questions. We're hoping you can answer the mitigation questions of a part 2 of the EAF. So with that, we're here for any questions and comments, and thank you for indulgence and letting me go through that package.
Thank you, Matt. That was a thorough review, and we all very much appreciate it. I know that I think what I'd like to do is jump right into an issue that I consider to be a critical one at the outset of this current application, and that is the legally non-conforming structure and the interpretation of the code and the ability to alter that legally non-conforming structure to any extent proposed without impacting the status of that structure as legally non-conforming. So it's a mouthful, but I think both you, Matt Lester and Kathleen Bennett, understand what I'm saying. So it has to do with some of the terminology that you had on your slide. I don't know if anybody on your team was able to confirm whether the terminology you had on your slide was, you know, where you got that, because I know at least the section of the code 187.14a does not have the word altered in it. Does not use the word altered. So I don't know if you picked that up from another section of the code and just you know, had another section that was equally interpreted or not. Do you
so Jane, this is Kathy Bennett. So the code allows non-conforming structures to continue to be used, repaired, maintained, and increased. The code does not define increase. It defines alteration as an increase. So yes, the words are right. Synonymous. Yep. And all right, so you know, we do have an interpretation from the code officer who said that you know we can do that. The project is allowed. We can do what we're proposing to do, and you know, I think you and I had this discussion the last time. The planning board does not have the authority to interpret the code. It has to rely on the code officers.
I'm not trying to interpret the code, Kathleen. Yes, we've had this discussion before. So thank you for reminding me of that. So if I could reiterate for my board members specifically, if you don't have the code section up in front of you, the reference in that code section is specifically to continued, specifically that code section allows legal non-conforming structures to be used, repaired, and maintained. That's the terminology used in that section. Unfortunately, those terms used, repaired, and maintained are not defined in our code. And as was referenced here tonight, the term alteration is defined in our code. And that term is defined as such, as applied to a structure and enlargement, whether by extending on a side or by increasing in height or by moving from one location or position to another. So that definition references increasing in some way. That's what an alteration is referencing. They're increasing a structure in some way.
Jane, is that
section?
Sorry,
let me finish, please. Section 187.14 is actually quiet with respect to any decrease of a structure. And that's what they're proposing, is to downsize. And so it has been interpreted by our code officer that what they're proposing to do in terms of downsizing this legally non-conforming structure is allowed, based on, I don't know, based on the fact that it's quiet, that the code doesn't say anything about that. So I don't know if they're planning board members, I don't know if you have any thoughts with respect to how this has been interpreted, or any concerns with respect to this interpretation.
I completely agree with your concern. The language is what it is. I'm looking at that 187.14 section A. I completely agree with your comments.
Jane, I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
Okay.
I just want to make the point that we gathered the information from the village, and we.
Yep. Kathleen wrote a letter to the village, to the attorney who represents the village. I've read the letter. Because I haven't read, because I didn't see a response letter, it is my assumption there was no response. I'm not going to interpret that fact. And I recognize that there has been communication, as there should have been. Definitely should have been, with the code officer. So where I'm going with this is, this interpretation is the premise of your application, and I respect that. And I am actually not saying that this is a good interpretation or a bad interpretation. I am definitely concerned because this is the premise of your application. Because the code is silent on the effect of downsizing or demolishing over 50% of a building, and that the impact of that on the legal nonconformity of that structure, because our code is silent in that respect, I feel it's very important to have very strong clarity on that issue. And my understanding is that as a planning board, because we have a whole lot of work ahead of us, as Matt just presented, we have a whole lot of stuff to go through, a whole lot of work ahead of us. And before we take a deep dive into that, I want to make sure that our foundation, our premise for this is solid. And so with that, I would like to challenge the interpretation, which would send it to the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals. And so I put that question out to the other planning board members, if you have any comment with respect to that.
Jane, I would agree with that as well. I think it's really important to understand. I think it is an interpretation, and as much as I respect also what Mike was looking at, I think that in thinking about it, it really isn't clear to me that it's the right interpretation. So I would agree with you.
Any other board member, any comments or thoughts on the issue?
No, I agree as well, Jane.
All right, so so with that, I'm going to actually make a motion. I move pursuant to Fayetteville Zoning Code Section 187-36. I move to challenge the Fayetteville Zoning Enforcement Officer's interpretation of the Village Zoning Code Section 187-14. This code section allows legal non-conforming structures to be used, repaired, and maintained. However, the code does not have a definition for the term used, repaired, or maintained. It has been determined by the code officer that the application from Northwood Real Estate Ventures LLC to downsize the legally non-conforming structure is allowed, even though that section of the code does not specifically allow it. And therefore I challenge that aspect of that, or just that interpretation. So that's my motion. Do I have a second? Or before we do that, any discussion on that motion with the planning board members?
No, I think it's Scott, I think it's a valid motion. I think it makes a lot of sense. We're not the ones to determine this. I'll second
So,
that.
okay, so Scott, you second it. Let's do roll call. Joanne,
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Scott
Aye.
and Jane, aye. So with that, I think with that motion that this then goes to the ZBA for a review of the code officer's interpretation of that section of the code.
So the balance of the application tonight, is there, can we get clarity on the other items?
Well, I think that with respect to seeker, there's no question. I mean, I'll ask the planning board members, but in my opinion, the planning board should be lead agency, and I would consider this a type 1 action. I recognize that the applicant has submitted a long form, a full EAF, environmental assessment form, which we all have reviewed and will review officially and move forward and go through that part 2 of that review. But I'm not in favor of, that's the beginning of the deep dive, Matt. We've done this and we take it very seriously. This is a complicated site. And due to the proposed, I don't know if I'm gonna say this right, adjacency, I think I said that right, due to the adjacency of the site to a park, due to some of the intense environmental remediation issues that are there. I recognize DEC is very involved. We've had that discussion before, but it's still a very intense item to be considered. And due to just the mere size or sheer size of this proposal is why I would recommend it's a type 1 action. And that we just take a hard look through that full environmental assessment form. Aside from that, we need to send this to the county for their review. I do think we should have this site plan reviewed by the fire department. And the final, my only other thought for tonight is, Matt, I think we had, I think I had asked for some structural engineering. If we're going to move forward with this approach, there's going to be some new construction as well as some demolition. And so I think that that's going to fall underneath our review. And I didn't really see a lot of that in this application. It's not going to stop us from moving forward. I was just curious if you could give us an update on that.
Existing conditions, structural?
Proposed new, and what's to be removed.
I think that's still somewhat uncertain based on the DEC.
Okay.
So they have the data for the under slab. I think Chris made some relevant comments to that earlier as we dug into the environmental cleanup process.
Okay.
So some slab may need to be replaced and remediated. I think
Okay.
structural will come at a later date when we get into the geotech and subsurface environmental, floating slabs, helical pilings. I mean, there's so many structural items that we'll get into once we start to look at the construction plans. But yeah, I appreciate everyone's time tonight. That was a thorough application. Can I just ask kind of a candid question? Does everyone like the project? Is this something that you see favorably upon?
Any board member want to answer that?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a like for us, we have to be sure that it meets all the requirements. We aren't against development in any way. We want to see our village develop and be successful, but it's not really for us to like or dislike in our position. We just really need to go through the application, which I think was very thorough and gave us a lot of feedback. So, that's where we need to go with it. Just to make sure.
I always like to ask the question. We've done over 100 developments in various municipalities. I always start with that question. Is this something that you'd like to see? And, usually we get a, yes or no. And either way, it's good to know where you're at. We could certainly work with both. But we just want to know what we're leaning into, or what the position of the board is.
No, to echo what Joanne said, and what I think we all feel as a board, we certainly are in no way against redevelopment of a brownfield into something that's useful. Does it, the drawings that I saw in the binder that was provided to us, I know they're preliminary, but I think to be mindful of some of the other projects that have occurred up and down that East Genesee Street corridor that have taken into account the street view, to take into account the even though we've reduced a lot of the intrusion on the neighbors, to take into account and be mindful of the impact of the operations of the proposed project on their backyards and lives, and those types of things are all extremely important to the board. I think, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn for anybody, that we have to make sure that we feel that it's done the right way, not somebody else's vision of what their store should look like, what that store will look like in a village like Fayetteville.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Dan. We definitely could work through architecture. We're excited to get to that point. As you said, it's not a like or dislike. It's, just following the rules of the road here. We felt we did that. A little bit disappointed that we're being questioned about the code that was the village's interpretation. This is a first.
You shouldn't be disappointed at all. This is critical because we're just following the village's process, and this challenge is not at all in any way meant to disrespect our code officer. Mark does an awesome job, and we know that. He works extremely hard. It really is a reflection on the fact that the code is silent on this issue. And there's different avenues and different ways and different reasons for interpretation. And it is this interpretation that's before us is the premise of this application. And I would expect that as the applicant, you would want a rock solid premise. So that's what we're seeking. And the approach here is for an appeal to the ZBA for their review of the code officer's interpretation. So and then based on that, we move forward.
If the
Matt, can I speak, please?
Yeah,
I just want to clarify a couple of things on this interpretation issue.
I just have a question real quick, Kathy. If the planning board is unclear of the code, what makes us think the zoning board is going to be more clear?
It's their legal responsibility to interpret our code. It's not our.
And who would they look to help them with the code interpretation?
Matt, I look forward to listening to their approach. So yeah. I can't answer that for them. So, but we will see.
So Jane, I appreciate, where you're coming from. I mean, my concern is that 130 or 18736 talks about when there's a disagreement with a determination, then you can take an appeal to the zoning board. And I'm concerned because, and I appreciate what you're saying. I mean, planning board members are supposed to be open-minded and objective, and you're sort of creating a situation where, there could be an appearance of impropriety because the planning board is essentially saying it doesn't agree with the code officer's interpretation and it needs to appeal that to the zoning board. I just think that sets up a situation where the entire planning board, has an appearance of impropriety here in reviewing an application when it disagrees with the code enforcement officer's interpretation of what's allowed and not allowed under the code.
I respect your opinion, Kathleen. Thank you.
So just so I'm clear, it sounded like the village planning board is comfortable to take lead agency should we come back from ZBA with clarity and we could work. Okay.
Yes.
And our application has been received and accepted with this question.
Yep.
Outstanding.
Yep. That's a very fair assumption, Matt.
I appreciate that.
So if I may ask, this is where we're at. How do we get on and what is the nearest available agenda for the ZBA? And can we fast track that through the village so we can get back to you guys immediately?
Karen, I think it's in 2 weeks, right?
Actually, it'll be this month because of the holiday and a couple conflicts. It'll be bumped to the last Monday, February 28th.
Okay.
Generally would be the 3rd. It'd be February 28th. So it would be in time before the next planning board meeting scheduled March 7th.
So Jane, just one other question. Will you be putting together an appeal application to the zoning board, something that we'll be able to review and respond to?
Yeah, it's a great question, Kathleen. And I'm assuming the answer is yes. I've never done this before, so this is new territory for me. So yes, we will, if that's the protocol, if that's the process, then we'll get something to put together.
I've never seen this. Sorry, I thought I was on mute.
So do we have to do anything? Again, I'm just want to make sure we don't miss that February 28th meeting. And Karen, is that application materials or defense materials by us? Does that have to be in 2 weeks prior? Again, that's my whole thing, is meeting deadlines and I guess where our standing is, we want to do everything we can to be on February 28th, so we're back before you guys March 7th.
I would imagine it would, it is the same deadline of 2 weeks prior to a meeting date. And the information you've submitted this far, I would believe would be appropriate for them to be reviewing as well, in addition to some document or application for interpretation being submitted to the zoning board, which Jane would initiate on behalf of the planning board, since that's titled, I'm not sure, what the vehicle will be in this instance. Generally, there's an application for a code interpretation.
An application, or, we'll put one together on behalf of the planning board to the ZBA. Jane can sign off as planning board chair.
Okay. All right.
And again, Ted, on our side, we want to be able to have an opportunity to submit defendable. And again, I don't know what I need to do, but I'm just envisioning expanding upon the code interpretation stuff that we've already provided to the board.
Yeah, you'll be obviously allowed an opportunity to do that right up to the hearing, Matt. We'll try to get the application in ASAP, so you see what it says in black and white. But
okay, that's all we can ask.
Yep.
Is Mike Jones going to be allowed access to his own counsel?
I'll defend
because
myself.
If Ted's representing the planning board, Mike should have his own counsel.
Yeah, I will represent myself. That's okay.
Just trying to get you some help, Mike.
Yeah, well, anybody want to help, that's fine, or help me interpret the code every day, that'd be great. There's another section too, 187.14F, Certificate of Legal Nonconforming, which will be required by the Board of Trustees. So I don't know where you want to throw that in, but, and I don't know.
So Mike, explain that again, because you said that to me. There's another piece here of this legal nonconformity that has to go before the town board. So,
Village board, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, village board, I apologize. Is that again an application form or just a letter of request to the village trustees?
It's a letter of request to trustees. All other applications have been basically take the building down, build new structures. This application includes the existing structure, so, you know, it's a different, you know, more code, different chapter. I hate to interpret it the wrong way, but.
So it's I'm sorry, I got to write this down. A request for legal nonconformity.
Correct.
Yeah, it states it so right in the section, Matt. If you just read this section, I think that you know, just give that a good read, and I don't know that one is as confusing because it's specific.
Okay.
Yeah, 187.14F.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time tonight. Matt, Naparella, thank you very much for running through all of your submission tonight. It was actually very helpful. And for everyone who's remained online, we absolutely appreciate all of your time. And Matt Lester, welcome to the project.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with the village.
Yes, that's very good.
I said, I have relatives in the village, and I'm a developing entity in the neighboring village, so it would be a pleasure to build something that would last for a long time here.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you very much. Planning board members, any comments or questions for the applicant tonight on any other issue? You know, we're a lot covered. We covered a lot tonight. So
Matt,
didn't know.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jane, just one question. Matt, I saw that in the site plan, the layout, that you connected your parcel with the Circle K. Was there any attempt or interest in connecting it to the post office as well, or is that just not possible?
I will say that DOT has requested that we approach Circle K for that connection. So we haven't got that far yet, but we're showing that connectability. If the village, I will say, if the village desires us to try to make that connection, we're not adverse to anything to if that helps traffic movements or village residents from leaving post office to enter our facility. We're more than amenable to any of those movements.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, everyone. Thank you all very much for your time tonight. I appreciate it. We'll be in touch. All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to?
Thank you.
I'm just telling everybody, we're just going to review our meeting minutes next and then adjourn our meeting. So you're all welcome to stay on, but that's all what we have left for tonight. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. Yes, Mike.
I think we might have Mark Shattuck here to answer a couple questions.
Yes, yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yes, so we'll listen to Mark next. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Mike, I don't see his name.
See,
I hadn't,
call in.
I hadn't seen him come.
Well, if he's not here, then we'll just move to our meeting minutes.
Okay.
Mark, if you're on and you want to raise your hand, please do, and we'll bring you in to talk with us. But in the meantime, planning board members, if somebody has a motion with respect to the meeting minutes or any comments on the meeting minutes from last meeting. Can I entertain a motion?
I can make a motion
Anybody?
to accept the meeting minutes as they were presented to us from in our email. I think you made some revisions, Jane, and I was in agreement with that.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye. Okay. And there is no Mark Shattuck. Is that right, Karen? I didn't
Not
see
that
his
I
name. in the-
see. Yeah.
Okay.
no, Unfortunately, I don't see that he signed in.
Okay.
Um,
So, I think that's it. Do we have a motion for an adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you all participants.